being quite global, just the breadth and spread of what clients are looking for insight and help with gives us great opportunity, but from a talent perspective, some really interesting challenges. One, I guess, similar to you in terms of how the technology is changing and the impact of that technology, and then how that links through to your purpose as an organisation and tapping into talent who have a lot of choice about where they could choose to deliver their skill, and so what makes each of our organisations special and attractive to get them to join in the first place, and then to contribute and to stay.
Yeah, those. I mean, you mentioned the competitive marketplace, right, and that need to attract talent.
Yeah.
It's so difficult at the moment. I mean, I'm sure you see it as well, but across the world, we're finding these hot spots of new data centers emerging, often in remoter places.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. You have to either bring talent into the area, grow talent in that area. So having those strategies to attract people from the industry already and maybe deploy them in new areas, or to recruit from within the sector.
Yeah.
We're finding a big push, I'm sure you are too, of having to bring people from out of sector into it. If we all keep stealing each other's resources, there's never going to be enough. So investment in reskilling or bringing people in from adjacent industries and school education as well, and the future generation, which we find really gets our teams out of bed in the morning to help invest in those new areas as well. Are you guys doing anything special to try and stay ahead of it? Like, how are you attracting people?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I think I would say that the speed at which we've had to think differently in the last 24 months particularly has really gained pace on that sort of pivotal moment in time, which was COVID and lockdown, where suddenly Pandora's box was open. So regardless of how you got work delivered in your respective industry before that point in time, as soon as the world went into lockdown, we saw some really different generational aspects to what was now an acceptable form of what is work. And we started to think quite differently actually about work is something you do, it's not somewhere you go. Now that is not possible for every industry, and I know manufacturing in particular had a much harder time where they had to keep blue collar workers and plant and maintenance and all of those things. You can't often do all of that remotely, but definitely for talent for us globally, the first question we get asked, and I'm sure it's the same for you guys, is can I work remotely and flexibly? And if so, how much of that time can I control my own destiny in terms of work? Yeah,
it's fascinating. You mentioned it there. We have teams primarily that are on site. So 4,000 of our 5,000 staff are site-based, and they're 24/7 critical environments. It's very difficult to do those from home or from remotely, and the shift patterns and 24/7 coverage. So we're in this new world and new environment. And we've got some, maybe what society views as some challenges in terms of that new way of working, right? Particularly when other industries or other sectors have got that. So, and very conscious not to create that sort of two-tier split, right? Between the different teams.
Yeah, we have something similar actually. If I think about, for us, the revenue generating roles predominantly are those roles that are client facing and often, field working, doing a significant proportion of their activity remotely. And we have had to think a little differently about the specific support that we put in place for those individuals. So it's an interesting take on that idea of remote and hybrid working. So for those folks who would have been in facility, access to company resource, access to internet and desktop and the like. The initial approach was to try and look at flexibility for that proportion of the workforce, and then looking at career development for that proportion of the workforce. But we have now moved that on because, you know, the recognition that what works for folks who can turn up to company facilities actually doesn't always translate for those who are field working, who are at client sites, who are going to a different client on your behalf every day. So we've tried to do quite a lot of work around culture, actually, and to start to think about lifelong learning, establishing curiosity. And so with curiosity, trying to also think outside the traditional way of doing things and think about how we can map to innovation cycles in some way. So create a bit more of a creative work environment. And we've actually seen a big intake as a result of that of our average age. So maybe not something that you guys experience quite so much, but we had a much older average age pre-COVID. And in the last 5 years, increasingly, we're now at sort of 60% of all our hires are the latest generation to join the workforce. So that creates some interesting challenge as well.
Yeah, you sort of alluded to it there. We have seen that traditionally with aging engineering sort of workforces. I think it's wider than just data centers, you know, within you know, the economic and sort of educational journeys that younger people take nowadays. But we are starting to see more and more of those generations, whether it's through apprenticeships or through other aspects, come in. And you alluded to there, the training aspect of it is really important, the purpose within that culture of taking top talent from wherever we can find it, and taking them on that journey of technical development, of operational development. And then catering for people that want to go and be people leaders and lead teams, or people that want to become SMEs or, you know, subject matter experts in their area. And I imagine it's the same from your kind of consultancy and you know, more commercial services side of it. And it's the same from our engineering and operational teams, that you can go a real technical route and end up in that very much expertise in a, you know, in a type of area and become a master of your craft. Or you can go a more business route and have that you know, leading of teams and leading of businesses, and start to introduce financial measures and people measures and those sorts of things to it. So although, you know, in different areas, maybe there's quite a lot of similarities between the two paths that we have to attract.
Absolutely is, and I think about some of the challenges that we see in the generations just joining the workforce. And interestingly, we did some research on this recently around the hybrid generation. And the things that you and I would have been expecting out of our career, both the upside, but also some of the challenge and sacrifice that we just took on board, because that's what you did to travel up in the organisation, is actually no longer something largely that younger generations joining the workforce are prepared to sacrifice. So focus on mental health and well-being really front and centre in a way that we haven't seen to the same extent in previous generations. And I think that has a big impact on what it means to be a people leader. There is so much more nuancing that needs to be thought about, particularly if you're operating with a global team, particularly if you're operating with expertise and generalist skill, and that multi-generational aspect. So you're right, it's exactly the same issue.
You mentioned there the global and local side of it, and that's a huge part for us, right? Because being, you know, the large provider of services globally, you have to have that global consistency, that scale that is value to our clients. But a fundamental thing is to be local and to have local teams, and we structure our business around markets and geographies, and to try and empower our leaders in those areas. We find that, if you have a strong leader who hires well and is active in their market and looks after their people well, you're going to see the retention, and you're going to see low attrition with it. So that balance of how do you have something globally consistent but locally delivered for cultural nuances and for local language it's a constant. You mentioned culture earlier. It's a constant cultural battle, I think, for both organisations and many others, around us. Around how do you really drive that in a meaningful way?
Yeah.
The hard part, I guess, is that it never ends.
Well, exactly.
And interestingly, given the type of environments that we support, those mission critical environments, and depending on what report you read, it'll be somewhere most incidents or near misses 60 or 70% will be linked to, in some way, to human error.
Yeah.
And so that constant investment in human factors training of, are you tired? Being aware of your environment. Have you worked longer than you should? Are you dehydrated? Do you need a drink? And having that culturally in regional and local areas to try and create that consistency, but that empowerment to stop and to say something, we need to pause something because we're going to put our clients or our operation or our people at risk here. Even something as sort of core as that can be challenging across a global organisation to establish in every single space.
Yeah, I agree. And for us in BSI, we have moved through quite a federated model. So we have workers out of 35 countries, so a little less than you guys in CBRE. But because that country lens has been quite a strong lens, and at one point was a P&L lens as well, the risk is that you can end up with almost that end-to-end approach being unique to a country. And so one of our challenges is, how do we encourage collaboration? Because a lot of our clients are looking for a global experience,
100%.
Although they'll get it delivered locally. And so it's, how do we make the best of the great thinking that happens to solve practical problems on the ground in a country? And when you raise that up, what's the thematic of that you could apply globally?
You've just described every multinational corporate, right? The challenge between, do you organise by country, do you organise by service line or by client? And life in the matrix of matrix reporting can be tricky. We've always tried to balance the need for country with the need for a common customer experience, so that account management side of things. And we have people whose specific job it is to look after the client's interests and service from regional teams. And sometimes some solutions will mean a slightly different structure to that. And as a service organisation, we have to be prepared to do that. Obviously, repeatability leads to scale and such there. But you end up with, I've always found personally, whether it's in any organisation I've worked in, that organisational structures and organisational methodologies and races are fantastic, absolutely important part, but it's behaviours that fix an organisational structure or fill in the gaps and are the mortar between the bricks of it. So how do you do that within BSI? What do you look at from or what helps in terms of that employee and services in your clients in terms of behaviours or focus areas?
I think there's probably a number of things that help enable that. In many ways, I think we are really, really fortunate in that there aren't many organisations that can really have a deep purpose about why they exist, particularly with an expert population. And so the purpose that binds us together around a fair society for a sustainable world means that the types of individuals who tend to stay with us and are attracted to work with us, that almost is the higher purpose around the choice they have about where they could work. And so that individual preference on behaviour that sometimes outplays where you don't have a really strong organisational purpose, I think we benefit from.
Yeah.
We can then layer on top of that the things, practical things. So we did a piece of work in the last 18 months around BSI Story, which is a way of talking through that journey that we have to go through, because every organisation has frustration points, right? I don't think I've worked in a single organisation in my career where you didn't have the occasional day where you'd think, really?
Yeah.
We're doing this.
We're filming a video.
Oh yeah, we're filming a video in an unair-conditioned room. But that just happens. And I think the thing that really binds the behaviour piece together is actually we're here to do something that is really important. And my part and my contribution in that depends upon me thinking about what is the shadow that I'm casting.
Yeah.
Because we're all casting a shadow. Is it the one we intend it to be? And so part of the culture work that we've done has just tried to give some very practical ways of self-reflection, as well as for individuals to call that out.
Those organisational behaviours or values, ours are the RISE values: respect, integrity, service and excellence, and having that common purpose or common standard to hold each other to, I think is really, really powerful. Within that, it's fascinating you mentioned purpose in terms of the fairer society side of it. We're constantly trying to stress that within our organisation, safety, uptime and reliability and engineering excellence, people management and the best talent. And it's those things that we find nowadays that are the differentiators. Yes, pay is important. Yes, benefits are important. Yes, you need to be tracking market, but career development in the right sort of environment and the right sort of culture
trumps it.
Every day of the week.
Yeah.
Every day of the week.
I mean, really interestingly, actually, I was just thinking as you spoke that the research we did recently around hybrid generation, there was an aspect of that in terms of one of the stats that was sort of 62, 63% around that figure of folks spoken to had said, if I can't work in a hybrid or remote way, then I'm not interested.
Yeah.
And I think it was nearly 50%, 49%-ish, that said if I'm currently working in a hybrid way and I was told I had to do full time, then I would look for
from a presence, attendance in the office.
I would look for a different role. And I think that's a real challenge, because we've had to think about, so what does in-person mean? We have different challenges to yours, but for us, collaboration is key. And if we think about the multi-generations, there is an aspect where we see difference between certain segments of our talent pool who would probably be quite happy not to have to come into the office very often at all, versus those who really need that in-person connection. And so the degree to which we can think about who is the client, what does high performance look like, and what does it require? And given that, how can we give you more control over your work, whether that is in-person, remote, hybrid? And when we do require you to come together, what is the purpose that we're trying to drive? And I think that's a really practical, tough issue, because often we get into the Teams meetings or Zoom meetings culture. And the danger is that even when we come together in on-premise, that we don't have closed door environment when we're just in those Teams and Zoom meetings. So we are trying to build a new muscle memory around what does collaboration look like for in-person, so that we're delivering different value for every person who might be able to do their work in a remote or hybrid way. But when we require them to come in and we're doing the average sort of 2 to 3 days a week, like most organisations. That is delivering value, because I think that will be an increasing issue. And we haven't yet seen it being in place long enough to see the long-term implications.
Yeah.
We are interestingly seeing a lower absence rate and lower sickness rate, which is interesting. I think one of the challenges for us, and it's a good challenge to have, but because of the breadth of subject matter expertise that we have to cover across all of the standards, all of the audit requirements and the certification requirements, often, and employing experts, often we can find that we have areas where it is quite a narrow career path. So one of the things that we've been looking at doing with our workforce is to start to use that concept of curiosity in our culture to start to think about how we can put the constituent parts and the strengths that exist within certain roles, but use that as a springboard for a different stage of career or a different focus to give a different lease and a different interest area. So we've done a couple of things. We've created a number of programs internally that come in off the back of some career podcast work that we've done. One around being bold in your career, and so we've got a lot of resources and a lot of discussion topics, specialist speakers that we bring in at certain points in the year, and we run a Global Careers Week every year, where we're really encouraging our people to think differently about the art of the possible, but to also take control of their own career. And so we ran a segment last year, actually, which was one of our most popular areas, around squiggly careers.
That sounds like me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we think about some of the things that we probably did in our career that, I don't know, maybe we didn't ask for, maybe we were leaned upon as, you've been in this organisation, we want you to do X. It wasn't necessarily something that was obvious to us, but it opened up opportunities and it opened up ways of thinking about career that was different. So we're trying to take a bit more of that portfolio approach, agile approach, getting our people to collaborate across borders and across our business divisions to really understand from other experts' experience how have they thought about growing their career in different ways, and then do some vignettes on individuals around what have been their career journeys, what do they wish they had known 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And we've also started to do some practical things around our talent acquisition teams. So we run, in effect, the equivalent of a search function for our internal candidates, so they can come and get interview feedback. They can think about, so we've done resources on how to smash your BSI interview. And so this encourages that I'm owning my own development, I'm owning my own career, I'm going to do some things that test and learn, and then we provide the support to enable people to go and try some stuff. And if it doesn't work, we are broad enough that they are able to go into something else. So that has been hugely successful, actually. At the end of the day, it's that practical issue of management bandwidth, time, energy. That applies equally to every organisation. And if you can think about the aspects of the job that only you can do and lean on the work from jobs that others can do, then it should get you where you need to get faster.
There's no doubt it's a team game. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. We try and almost sort of downstream and empower our business. So I mentioned earlier that we are geo or regionally focused, or country focused, for all of those local benefits and so on. But also that each of our leaders is responsible for safety. They're responsible for finding talent and working with the market. They're responsible for developing their people. They're responsible for retaining them. They're responsible for growth. Responsible for other financial metrics and supplier relationships. And then we support them with subject matter experts, probably at a regional level, sometimes at a country level, in technical and QHSE and procurement, to try and drive that ownership and push that decision making to the site, and to drive that mini MD or mini CEO mindset within our business.